Welcome back to Unhinged Addiction podcast. I'm Eric. I go by the Mr. Impulsive on social media. If you haven't been to my website, visit my website, ericbzink.com, ERIC, as in boy, ZINK.com. This is my podcast where I talk all shit that's unreal about addiction in just a real raw form. Because I think that's how we relate and we learn the best as an addict. I'd like to thank my sponsors out there. Phase 1, Dial It In, Utopia, great for anxiety. I do a lot of work with supplements and stuff out there because it does help you through the withdrawals. I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring on my website. I have supplements there like magnesium and lion's mane to help you through withdrawals because I know what it's like when you're getting sober and people are like telling you to fucking raw dog it. You don't have to raw dog it, and there is shit out there that does help you some. But if you go to ericbzink.com, have tons of stuff there, tons of resources. Hit the affiliate links. You'll see a lot of different things out there that can help you. And on today's episode, I don't even know. I mean, it's funny. I'm like season 1, episode 2, and I'm autistic. So I'm struggling already with this on my second episode because I'm like, this shouldn't be season 1. This isn't January. Like January would be like season 1 essentially. So like maybe this is like pre-season, like episode 2. I don't know. My goal is to do these bi-weekly or weekly. I'll probably go weekly to begin with, and then seeing where my podcasts go. From there, I might change it up. I don't know. And today, topic I wanted to talk about, what was cocaine addiction was like. I do like to share a lot of my own testimonies, a lot of stories. Eventually, I'd love to have guests on the show and talk, and share their stories, because it's like all of our stories are just really insane. When you talk to addicts, we all have some really fucked up stories. When you talk to family members and stuff, you have fucked up stories, and that's why I like to share. It's not only is it for the addict who's trying to get sober, like when you're trying to get sober out there, you feel alone, you feel that nobody can understand. To find real authentic stuff out there, I think is really important. But even if you're like a family member, like a son or a dad or a wife, and you're trying to understand that you have a loved one that's an addict, whether it's a kid or your partner or parent, and you're trying to understand like how to help them with addiction, to realize how insane it is, I think is where it really begins, is to learn that you can't help an addict. You can learn the difference between enabling and supporting. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't know the difference between enabling and supporting, and that's why a lot of spouses will bury their partner and a lot of parents will bury their kids, because we end up enabling them. And when you enable an addict, you just help them, I think, towards a grave a lot sooner. But what cocaine addiction was like for me, cocaine addiction was like Christmas. That's the easiest way I could explain what cocaine addiction was like. It was such a process. I was obsessed with the whole thing. I was obsessed. I would obsess about it even when I wasn't using on a daily basis. I would use on a weekend, and I would be always thinking about it a little bit, like in the back of my head, and come up with like days and like, hey, I'm not gonna do anything this weekend, but like next weekend I'll do a gram or two of coke, and it would be like I'd be all excited about that and building it up in my head and dude, what else are we gonna go do? Like at that time, like cocaine was fun. Like I ain't gonna lie, dude. Like cocaine was fun when you don't realize it's making you an addict. It's a party, dude. It gives you big mood energy. You wake up the next day with the Colombian cold, and you kind of think it's cool, and you're like, yeah, dude, my nose is fucking plugged and blown out. But it slowly turns into this obsession that you don't realize that it's like wrapping you in. It's like hugging somebody, and you don't realize that while you're hugging them, they're literally jabbing a knife into your fucking kidney and you're bleeding out. That's the scariest thing I think about cocaine addiction. Because when I used coke for like the first time in high school. It was kind of cool, like, hey, I did it. It wasn't really my thing. Like I had a lot of fears of drugs. Crystal meth was a drug that really scared me. I never wanted to do that. Never wanted to do heroin because you got to think about it. I'm in high school in the 90s, all right? So it's not like today. Or even what it was like, 10, 20 years from now, now back in the day. Heroin was, the only way you really doing heroin, I thought, is you had to shoot it up. And I had a huge fear of needles. So there was a lot of stuff out there I really didn't want to do. And even cocaine wasn't one of those things I really wanted to do. It's glamorized a lot in the movies. It's like a successful drug. It's like businessmen are doing it. Rock stars are doing it. Like it's almost so portrayed of like this weird safe drug because they don't show the aftermath of it. They'll just they'll show people using it or talk about using it, but they don't show the aftermath of like if you don't get clean and sober, eventually you lose everything, and then you're doing fucking crack and you're sucking dick on the fucking street corner homeless, because you got nothing left. Your fucking teeth are falling out of your fucking mouth, and it's like you're at that point you can't afford cocaine. You're fucking doing crystal meth, or you've moved on to something like fentanyl. They don't show that further down story, unfortunately. So I think it always leaves this weird fucked up stigma for cocaine. And so yeah, when I first did it, like it wasn't no thing, and it wasn't really all that cool to me. It wasn't until I was actually in my 20s. I was a sales manager at RV dealership called Revolution RV, and I am going through a divorce. I'm divorcing my first wife. Her name was Gillian, and that divorce fucks me up a lot of ways because I wanted to get divorced when we first got married, and like 6 months into our marriage, like I really wanted to be divorced. And her family talked me in, out of it. My family talked me out of it and stuff. They're like, no, marriage is hard. You got to work through it. We were really young when we got married, and I'm like, okay. I fell back in love with her, and right before graduation for her master's degree, we had bought a house together and shit. She tells me she wants a divorce, and I'm just like, I felt so betrayed. I was like, dude, if you wanted a fucking divorce, we should have got divorced, years ago. I could have went a whole different direction with my life. I've had a lot of resentment. And I was like, no, like I had to work this out. You had to fucking work it out. But her parents took a different stance this time. Instead of like, oh no, you got to work it out. They're like, nope, she's leaving you. I'm like, dude, fuck you people. Like, where was this? Like, you should have told her that when I wanted out and just been like, fuck him, like leave. Like we should have been done. But I held on a lot of that pain and a lot of that anger. And I won't ever forget, I was with a friend of mine, and we were at this dive bar. Like, I had gotten sober actually for like 90 days because I was drinking. And she said one of the reasons she wanted a divorce was I was alcoholic. And so we're at this dive bar, and we're drinking, we're shooting pool. I love to shoot pool, especially at this time. And so we're shooting pool, and he's like, dude, let's get a fucking bag. I'm like, all right, like, ain't thinking nothing of it. Like, throw him fucking $75. He's like, I'll throw him the rest, dude, and give you some. I'm like, all right, cool. Plugs, cruises by, drops off a bag. We go into my car. It's an ICP fucking CD case. I had a BMW 325i. It was brand new. Sport package, premium package, little decked out 325i. And we break it up on the CD case, and I remember just doing that line. And fuck, man, that hit my face, and my face is just like tickling. The drip hits, my mouth starts going numb. I'm just like, fuck yeah. And we go inside and we shoot more pool, and we're going back out to the car and doing a couple, line here and a line there, going back in. And dude, it was just a great fucking night. I was in a great mood. I was massively depressed at this time and like really struggling mentally. And like, I felt fucking amazing. And I'm go home and I'm just like, fuck yeah, dude. I had the rest of whatever, when we split it up or whatever in a bag, and I'm just like, fuck, I'm gonna hold on to this when I fucking need it. This is the shit, dude. Maybe this isn't even normal Coke. Like, this is maybe cut with something, because like this is too good. And no, it wasn't the case. It was just me falling in love with cocaine. And that was the reality. Like, it was so drastically when I had done it once to when I did it again. And the amazing thing is, so like, I do a lot of mentoring on my website. So if you go to ericbzink.com, there's a mentoring session that I do, and I do a lot of mentoring with guys that have ran into the same thing. So I'm 23, and then I had done it when I was 17. I ran into a lot of guys that did it like when they're in high school. And they didn't do it again until they were like late 30s and early 40s, and it hit them the same fucking way. And I'm like, dude, I get it, like in a different aspect. Like, I was a lot younger, but it's amazing how many people, like, they're like, I didn't expect, to be 38 and hooked to cocaine. I didn't expect to be 41 and hooked to cocaine. Like, I hadn't done coke for like years, and they're telling me like I was in my like 30s and I was happy and all this shit, and now I'm in my 40s. I'm addicted to coke, and I'm like, I get it. Because it does hit different at different times for us. And I think a lot of it has to go with like what we're going through. And also what we almost like register that first kind of like memories with. Like, mine was just, and it took away a lot of my depression. It took away all my fucking depression, man. It took away my anxiety. I was really able to enjoy the night. I like my ex-wife was like out of my mind, so I wasn't like even drunk texting her. I ended up just passing out in bed, just being like, dude, that's fucking amazing. Waking up the next day like, fuck yeah, dude, that was a great night. And that was the worst thing that could have like happened. is waking up the next day like, dude, like this was an amazing evening and I feel awesome now. Because in reality, what that ended up doing is just placing it in my mind as like, this is like a safe drug. And from then on, I would just, especially for the next while there, I did a lot of cocaine. I mean, it was so bad at a little point when I was like 23, 24, I was managing this dealership, Revolution RV. It was I was running the lot that was in El Cajon and California. It's right outside of San Diego. And I had them pull up a toy hauler right at the entrance one day. And we plugged it in and I got a fucking 8-ball. And me and two other salesmen are in there. We're hot plating on the fucking microwave in this toy hauler. Fucking lines of coke, and we're snorting them. And I remember fucking customers pulling out and do a fucking rail and then run out the fucking door and go help this customer. We were all so fucking high because it got to the point like I couldn't control it. That was my thing with alcohol and with cocaine. I could not control it to do anything. It had full control over me. I became obsessed with a feeling. I didn't want to lose that feeling. So I had to keep using, otherwise that feeling was going to go away. That was like my weird fear when it came to using coke. So now all of a sudden I have this mad paranoia that I'm going to lose this high, I'm going to lose this feeling. And I went through a bunch of phases where, coke was in and out of my life now for the next just years and years. It wasn't really until I did a decent amount of it. When I met my wife, Brandy, we started doing coke again. And I started doing a lot of coke. And I had told her I had a coke problem. And she didn't really believe me. I'm like, no, I have a coke problem. Even at that time, like I wasn't doing it. I hadn't done it for a little while, and I knew how bad my coke problem was. I remember telling her I have a coke problem, and we ended up doing it together. And she was like, "Oh my god, you get fucking crazy eyes!" Like, and I was obsessed. Like, if I'm gonna get fucking fucked up on coke, you're getting fucked up on coke. Like, we're all getting fucked up on coke. And her and I would get super fucking high, and then we'd fuck all night long. I don't know if we would really fuck because like your dick doesn't really work after a while. And like I would like wet noodle her for a while or like eat her out for a while. And like she'd try and get me hard and it'd be like fucking half-ass hard and try and have sex and then just keep doing more coke. But her and I did a lot of coke together. That was one of my worst experiences even with cocaine was one time I got two 8-balls of coke. They came in two separate little baggies. And it was like a bluish tint. And I knew it was massively cut. I didn't know what it was cut with. And it turned out it was cut with meth. And that was the night that she ended up pissing herself, holding up the door, thinking the SWAT team was going to break in. And that was the worst. Like she had the worst fucking paranoia and visuals. And no matter what I told her, I couldn't convince her. Like, dude, I'm looking out the window too. And there's no cops out there. There's nobody on the roof over there, but she swore to fucking God there was. Swear to God, if she stayed by the door, the SWAT team wasn't going to break down the door because they can't break down the door because she's there, and they can't risk killing her if they break down the door. But if she's not there and they can break down the door, and I'm just like, this makes no fucking sense. And she asked me to swap places with her, and I remember she said she had to go to the bathroom. She's walking. We were in a loft apartment. It was a 2-story loft apartment, and she was walking up there and ended up pissing herself. And I was just like, fuck, dude, like how the fuck did we get here? But that was shit. But the ultimate worst part when my addiction was after she ended up killing herself. In 2015, Brandy committed suicide. And I had stopped doing coke actually for a while. Like coke always had like these massive phases in my life, but I knew how obsessed I was with it, and I would just drink. Drinking was always there. Drinking was the constant. Cocaine was always there when the drinking got way too out of control until finally when she killed herself. I could not control it. I could not control cocaine use. And I remember that it just started letting my problems escape. And actually that coke use started a little bit before her suicide even, because like we were separated. I knew that she was going through shit like mentally. I knew we couldn't be together. I really loved her, but like we couldn't be together because like she would just ask me for alcohol and I'd go get her alcohol, and like that's all we did. We were like toxically codependent addicts. And so I know that there's these struggles with us, and it's like, fuck, what do you do? So we ended up separating. I ended up getting with this girl. Her name was Amber, and she ends up being my ex-wife here later on. She was a receptionist at Dennis Dillon, and she was hot. I remember she was coming in for an interview, um, and I hid coke from her. Though I don't think her and I ever did coke together, um, at all. So when I met her, like I drank, and she knew about my drinking. But the weird part was, is like after my wife killed herself, I started just becoming obsessed with cocaine, and I hid it from my wife. It was like my way of protecting her and my way of like escape, my way of like self medicating and therapy all on my own, dude, without her. And she didn't fucking know. I made tons of money. I blew tons of money on cocaine. We didn't have a joint checking account or bank account, so she never saw like how what I did with my money. And that was the fucked up part is I would just get tons of coke and I would do lots of cocaine, and that would help offset the effects of my alcohol. So I got to the point like I had a couple dealers that I knew. They would even put my fucking coke in like paper because I would eat the paper. That's how obsessed with cocaine I was. I was doing coke. Starting off the day, I would do some fat rails, and I'm not talking like one line or two little lines of coke. I was doing these fat fucking rails where you're gagging afterwards, and the fucking drip. Because I thought, you know, the more that I do at once, of course, the longer my high is going to last, was my mentality. The one thing that made it last longer that I didn't realize was I was drinking a lot at that time. So it actually was creating cocaine, and they didn't even know about this back then. But it makes coke stay in your system longer, like that euphoric feeling. It is more euphoric, and so you know, it's lasting my system a lot longer. And dude, I would get so fucking horny, and I didn't want to hurt my wife. And dude, I'm just sinking so much money into this shit. But like, what do you do? Like, I mean, I would just like yank one off to like tons of fucking porn. So for a while, I would just sit and masturbate to fucking porn. Like, I'd be at work, I would be high as fuck, yanking one off in a fucking stall, fucking high as fuck on coke. Um, and like, it was all right. Like, I could kind of cope through that way. You know, I cheated on her. Like, we shouldn't have been together. Like, I cheated on her a few times. She didn't even know about. But once I started finding people that would use coke with me and get high or get fucked up, then it became a different story. And I had a couple defaults people. There's four of them. One girl, her name was Selena. She was older than me. We get rooms at Motel 6. And I would just get completely fucking ruined with her. I'd be fucking high on coke before we get there, and I'd fucking pop some Viagra, and we would just fuck for hours. Her cousin Brittany was hot, and she ended up living with us, and she liked to drink, and we would do coke even sometimes together, and we would have sex nonstop. There's a 19-year-old receptionist. We'd have sex nonstop, and then I had a saleswoman named what was her name? Like, I think it was like Kimberly, and we'd have like, and then there's a bunch of just random people in between there, and that was the thing of like what my addiction was like, was just constant escaping. Like, my addiction was like a second life. It was a second life of just total escape. No reality. It was sex. It was using. It was getting high. It was getting drunk. This was what my cocaine addiction was. My cocaine addiction was just getting high. I couldn't just have one. I couldn't stop, and I was just obsessed with it. It removed everything in my life. And the parts of it that was messed up is like, I mean, I ended up ODing on coke a handful of times where you're vomiting it, you know, just up, and your body's just having these full body, just like rejection to it. The delirium, I'm ignoring my ex-wife. Like, I mean, I remember her calling me and blowing up my phone because I'm not home. And I'm literally in my car having sex in the back seat doing lines of coke. Ignoring her calls. Like, I'm literally just grenading my life, not taking any responsibility in my life. And at the moment, it felt like it was the greatest thing ever until that high went away. And you realize what you just did in your life. You realize how much you're hurting somebody. You realize how much trauma you create. You realize how much trust you break. You realize how destructive it truly is. And that's the worst thing about coke. Like I loved coke more than anything else. And that's not right, dude. Like, it ended up being a lonely life. Like, it ended up being a life where I was more content going to a motel by myself, locking myself in a room and just using, than I was going out and experiencing life and swimming in the ocean or going on a date with my wife or going out with friends. I was more almost at this weird piece where I wanted to just disappear from the world. A drug that started off as such a party drug, such a fun drug for me, turned into such an isolating drug. Like, I know what it's like to be using and you're sobbing and you're like, you want to almost die and you wish like a lightning bolt would hit you, some divine fucking intervention would happen. Like, you just want it to end. And then you do another line. And you're like, then you start sobbing even more because you're like, why the fuck did I do that? Like, you can't stop. And at like this weird point, you realize it's like it's taking your soul from you. Wherever you're at, you're thinking about getting high. Wherever you're at, it's renting space in your brain. How can I get a bag? Do I have enough money to get a bag? Fuck, I can't pay this bill. Or how do I jockey this? Fuck, I'm gonna pawn, a Rolex off to my dealer. I'll buy it back from him on payday, so I can get a couple bags. That's what your life all of a sudden like revolved around. Your life didn't revolve around anything else. You don't have to raw dog your withdrawals. There's supplements out there to make it a lot easier for you, whether it's magnesium with lion's mane, there's different sleep formulas. There's all natural stuff to make these withdrawals a lot easier. And it doesn't make it go away, but it makes it easier. Go to ericbzink.com, click on the shop. You're going to see the supplement lines. Find what works for you, man, because you don't have to go through it alone. Else. My life didn't revolve around, buying a house or creating a life or any of that. My life revolved around just getting high and running away from it all. That was what my cocaine addiction was like. It was like a party that ended, everyone went home and I stayed by myself. And then I just wanted to die. And that was like the worst. I mean, I would get at a certain point finally very depressed. That's part of the reason I don't own a gun. Because if I owned a gun, I would have blown my brains out. And I know that. It was an obsession that I couldn't stop. It was so weird. As soon as I would do one line, I could not stop until it was gone. Or until I like forgot about it or was so high, so like blacked out that I would forget that, I had some left over or whatever. The only thing I was really good about was like when I would get home, I would leave it in my car because that was one weird thing. And I think a lot of addicts out there actually relate. Like, we won't do it around our partners if we're not using with our partner, and we hide it like a motherfucker from them. And so I would get home and then I would be home and I'd be like, hey, do you want a slushie or something from like 7-Eleven? And I'd get in the car and I would fucking do like 3 lines, go to 7-Eleven, get my ex-wife a slushie, do another line when I got in the fucking car, get like 2 shooters of fucking 99 bananas, slam those down, and then have a Coke and like Altoids and, chew those on the way home, trying to fucking get rid of the smell of the alcohol. My nose was so blown out that I would like wet down paper towels and tissues and I would snort them through my nostrils nonstop. I always had a wet paper towel with me. You could always tell I was doing Coke if you paid attention, because I always had like a wet paper towel or a wet napkin or a wet tissue, and I would always just snort through it to keep blowing and clearing out my sinuses and to keep moisturizing my nose, actually, because I realized the more that I kept my nose moisturized, the more that my nose didn't get fucked up very quick. And so I always had that on me so that I could do at any time I could do lines. Because there's nothing worse than when your nose was so clogged that you couldn't do lines and then you're like gumming it. Because gumming it didn't give me the high that I wanted. I liked the breaking it up. I loved the whole process. I was addicted to the whole process of it, of laying out the line, rolling up a dollar bill or rolling up a bill, whatever it was, snorting it up my nose, feeling the grains each individually hit my nose and kind of go down. When that drip would kick in and how it would taste, that kerosene, like bitter smell even it had, and the kerosene-ish like taste that it had, chemically taste. Like, I loved all of that. I was so obsessed with the whole process, and then it just couldn't stop. And it wasn't a fun drug. It was an obsession, and it was like I just wanted to run away, and that was what it was like. It was a complete and utter just nightmare. And God, I mean, at the end when I finally woke up, I was alone. Fucking, and pretty much everyone in my life left me. I'd lost a really good paying job. Again, I lost lots of jobs due to the fucking using. And I was always the victim too. It was never my fault. It was everyone else's fault. But I couldn't stop. And then when I did, it was like the party was finally over. And I realized how alone I was. And I realized like how I was, that I didn't even know who I was sober. And that's a pretty fucked up thing, man. When you don't know who you are sober, when you don't know what kind of life you have sober, you don't know how to enjoy life sober, you don't know how to be happy sober, that's a fucked up place to be. And and from there, I finally, one day, finally decided I was going to stop. You know, nobody got me sober. My ex-wife didn't get me sober. None of my friends got me sober. Nobody got me sober. I got me sober. And I didn't even really want to be sober. My plan wasn't even to stay sober. My dad ended up committing suicide, and I kind of latched onto my sobriety. But like when I did even make the decision to at least get sober for a little bit, I mean, I'm lying in bed, sobbing my eyes out by myself, like, how the fuck did I get here again? And I knew the one constants in my life was always alcohol and cocaine. And I'm like, man, maybe if I get rid of these in my life will be good again. And I made that decision. And life did get good. I mean, it was a process. I hated being sober for a long time. I didn't know how to handle being sober. Like there was a lot of learning that went on. Ultimately, like looking back now, over 7 years later, I'm grateful for the last 2 years of my life. I love the last 2 years of my life. Like once I went through therapy and stuff and really learned why I was using the way that I was, like a lot of stuff changed for me. And that was what was beautiful about it. And, you know, that's started to, you know, eventually even motivate me to share. I mean, I was so embarrassed about my cocaine addiction and being a coke addict. When I first started doing all my social media, and started even like talking about like my addiction, I would tell people I was an alcoholic. I was so embarrassed to tell them I was a coke addict. Because I didn't believe like you could really be a coke addict. I'm like, there ain't no fucking way in hell, you know, like no one's gonna believe me. And then all of a sudden I realized that no, there's a lot of actual coke addicts out there. That it was something that I didn't realize that it was real. But you're really embarrassed, dude. It's almost more like socially acceptable to tell people that you're an alcoholic than it is a coke addict. And that was the case with me. Like I was more comfortable telling people, hey, I'm an alcoholic, dude. You know, I'm an addict. I'm an alcoholic. I can't be around anything else. I kind of blanketed in everything, you know, under my alcoholism. Even when I told my ex-wife and like my family and everyone, I told them all I'm an alcoholic and that I need help. And I started treating it the best that I could. And, you know, there's a lot of mistakes I think I made along the way, the things I could have did differently to maybe make it go quicker or help me better or become more of a person sooner. But ultimately, I'm glad of where I'm at and how I went about it because it made me into who I am. You know, it's blessed me in a lot of ways getting sober. I do social media for a living now. I have, you know, speaking engagements all over the country that I go to. I wrote a book that's going to be out hopefully this spring. End of the spring will be out. You know, I created this social media that I know helps a lot of people. I created this brand of, you know, getting sober and fighting through mental health and suicide awareness. And I'm proud of what I created. And I wouldn't have ever done that if I didn't find the strength to get sober. And that's the power I think of sharing. I think the biggest thing is being able to find people that you relate to and that we're using and go, dude, okay, I relate a lot to that person. They got sober. How did they do it? And anyone who relates to me, I always will tell people, like, I got sober by telling everyone I was an addict. You don't have to tell them that you're a fucking cocaine addict or heroin addict or meth addict right away. But if you at least get it out there that you're a fucking addict and you need help, it at least lets you down that path. And then you can kind of go at your pace of what you feel comfortable sharing. Because, you know, I get it. Not everyone feels comfortable sharing. And I think a lot of us are afraid to share because of all the shit we did when we were an addict that we're ashamed of. All of the hurt that we did, all the lies that we told, all the shit that we did behind our partners' backs, all the shit that we did when we should have been doing something else. The birthdays when we should have been at somebody's birthday and we're actually out fucking somebody and doing fucking coke. When you should be doing something and you're just being a fucking horrible human being. I mean, that's the things that I think, you know, fear people the most when it comes to getting sober. And it's eventually going to come out and it's eventually going to be there. And so it's kind of like, when do you rip the Band-Aid off? And that's for everyone's decision to make, not my decision. But I hope people enjoy these podcasts. I mean, if you ever want to get a hold of me and you have questions on it, if you go to ericbzink.com, that's EricBzink. .com. That's my website. It has all my social medias and stuff there. Official ericbzink@gmail.com is my email, but you can also email me through the website. If you have topics that you want me to talk about, or if you're even in the Boise area and you'd like to be on my podcast, I'd be down for it. I'm going to really give this podcast thing a shot to see what it kind of turns into. And plus, it's one of those, I love to hit all the different forms of media out there and help people out there. I know the power of podcasts. I know the power of when we're getting sober, man, and you're looking through YouTube, you're looking through everything, just trying to find something to relate to. And hopefully this helps people. I mean, that's the ultimate goal that I have, is just, I didn't want people to be alone through their journey. If you want to know why I started all this stuff, I started all of it because I just wanted a dad to make it home one more time. When my dad killed himself, if I could make a difference and a dad could go back home to his son one more time, or a mom to her daughter or her son, or whatever, like a parent come home one more time, then it's worth it. And that's what started all this. So if you haven't checked out my social medias, check them out. I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring. If you want to do mentoring with me, go to ericbzink.com. Definitely check out Utopia if you struggle with anxiety. It's amazing. It's under the affiliate area. Also, Dial It In is great if you have ADHD and you don't want to take ADHD meds. I'm going to do a podcast actually on that. Along with my BAMF Wellness and Recovery. I created this back when I started all my social media. I did BAMF. I always will do BAMF, man. BAMF. Badass motherfucker. Made it through 100% of your worst days to make it through 2 today. BAMF Wellness and Recovery is under the supplements there. Magnesium, lion's mane, stuff to help you sleep. It's all natural stuff that I wish I would have known when I was getting sober. It makes a huge difference, helping you fight through. And then I have even tools like my journal that I use. I know that you can't see. I might put this video up on YouTube even, or make some clips of it. Who knows? But I have a journal that I put up on my site for sale that I literally use it. So you can see at the time of my podcast, I went to the gym. I've already done my AM uploads. I've had 2 shakes right now. I have to go have a meal now. I still have 10,000 steps to pretty much get in. But I can mark it off now. My podcast, Unhinged Addiction, is done. I did 2 podcasts today, which is kind of cool. But I still have a bunch of TikToks, and I got a bunch of YouTube videos and shit to make still, because I'm out of town for the next couple days. But I do appreciate everybody who's following these. Hopefully, eventually, this will be the #1 addiction podcast there is, because you all fucking rock, and all of us are going to make a difference when it comes to helping people get sober and helping educate people, knowing that, you know what, addiction's pretty fucked up. So next week I will be doing another episode, and I appreciate you guys. So just stay tuned and enjoy yourself, man. Just keep fighting the good fight, because you're worth it. For more, go to ericbzink.com. Anything from mentoring to help to support to resources. Again, that is ericbzink.com for anything that you need for any of the struggles that you're going through.